Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very special Wednesday edition and live edition of the podcast. Last week in Los Angeles, I sat down with Kelsey Mann. He made one of the most successful directorial debuts of all time with Pixar's Inside Out 2. Before a live audience at the London Hotel in West Hollywood, Kelsey told me about what it took to take that leap to directing after a few years of working behind the scenes at Pixar, how he let joy lead the way in his own emotional console making the movie instead of anxiety, and the many versions of the movie that existed before the one that made it to theaters and became a global phenomenon. I'm Katey Rich, and this is the Prestige Junkie Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Hello. Hello.
You need no introduction. You're ready to go.
Hi, everyone.
Are you getting used to walking into a room of people who've just seen this film and are maybe wiping away tears and working through their feelings?
There's been a little bit of that. A lot of it's been, we've been very busy too. So a lot of it's been like, do an introduction, then we got to go. I'm like, I can't sit in the audience and like be there. Like, no, we got to go. So this is really great to come and see after you guys have seen the film. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, well, a lot of people around the world have seen the film at this point. I think it is safe to say. I mean, I don't know how, do people in your life say like, how are you? Like, really, how are you? Like, what have the last like 6 or 7 months been like for you as this movie has become a just genuine phenomenon? Like, you hope your movie will be successful, but I assume you don't hope for this, of what's happening with this.
I've been asked a lot of what emotions are at my console. I get that a lot, and it's honestly been a lot of joy. Even just hearing you say like it's been such a phenomenon, like it's sinking in that it actually happened. Because you pour so look at you guys sat through all the credits. Thank you so much. Like there's a lot of names that take so many people, and this took 4 years to make, and so there was obviously a lot of pressure for it to do well, and the expectation was very high. Because a lot of people have seen and loved the first film, including myself, and I didn't want to let anybody who was a fan of the first film down, and especially a lot of the people that worked on the movie.
Yeah. I mean, to go back to the beginning for you, I think you've said before that you had worked at Pixar as a story editor and a few other films. You said you never wanted to be a director. Like, you never thought that path was going to be for you.
I never thought I would be. Oh. I never thought I would get the chance. You know, I was a story supervisor. I was a story artist. Yeah. After I graduated college, I applied to Pixar. And they didn't accept me. And so I worked in the animation industry. I moved to LA. And I worked in the industry for like 10 years. And then I reapplied like nearly a decade later when I felt like maybe I'm good enough now. And I applied and got accepted as a story artist. And so it'd take me like a whole decade just to become a story artist. And I thought, this is fantastic. I'll retire a Pixar story artist and I'd be incredibly happy. But then very quickly got the opportunity to be a story supervisor.
Okay.
And then...
Well, just for anyone who hasn't worked within Pixar, difference between a story artist and story supervisor, how do you describe that?
So a story artist, we're the ones who like get the written script. We're the first ones to visualize it, and we do it through drawing. We basically draw the movie from beginning to end. And at Pixar, the secret is that we just keep making the movie over and over again, but we do it with drawings. And our editorial team works with the story team. We draw out the movie and we watch it every 3 months. And then that's part of the writing process. We have so many versions of the script. If Meg and Dave were here, they can tell you the exact number of pages that they've written on this movie, which is a lot.
Probably in the thousands at this point.
Yeah. It's a lot. There's so many versions. I think what you just saw, I think there's only 2 shots that were in the first screening that are in this screening. One is the puberty alarm going off, because I always knew I wanted that thing to go off. And then... I'm getting a little emotional, is the last shot of the movie, which is Riley staring at herself in the mirror and smiling, loving what she sees. I had that image from the very beginning. I'm like, I want to end the movie that way, with Riley looking at herself and all of her flaws and imperfections and smiling. I'm like, that's what I want the movie to be about. So that was in there from the very beginning, but everything around it changed.
Was it always a cliffhanger of not necessarily knowing?
No, that wasn't. No, the idea of her smiling and looking at herself, really
which is
looking
more
at herself.
important than the team part.
That came a little bit later, because in the first versions, she wasn't a part of a hockey team at all.
Oh, wow.
No, she was doing like a talent show thing, because we're like, where's the worst place possible if you're a teenager to be? And we're like, maybe on stage in front of all of her peers. And so we're like, a talent show. And so we did a talent show thing, and we're like, this feels weird. Like, why? And then we were like, let's really lean into what makes Riley unique. And we're like, well, she plays hockey.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cool. And maybe we lean into that. And the pressures need to rise on Riley. And when you're a kid, when you're younger, when you like go to join a team, you kind of automatically get on the team. And here's where the pressures start to rise, and she needs to try out. And there's a chance that she may not make the team anymore. And let's try to get that, at this age, it's all about your peers. And we're like, it would be great if somehow we can figure out a way so that she needs to join the team in order to be with a social group.
Yeah.
Because that's really important at this age.
Yeah.
They do not care about, parents and caregivers at this age. It's all about their friends.
Yeah, she jumps out of the car with her parents. It's just like,
yes.
goodbye.
That's a lot of that comes from like real life. I did have a thing where they were like, she just hopped out immediately and she's gone. But that was really fun to record with Kensington, who plays Riley, where I go, let's just improv. I'm going to ask you, like, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have this? Do you have that? And we just improv that. And I just did a whole string of stuff with her. And that whole part with like, do you have your phone? Yes. Is it charged? Yeah, it's at like 50 or whatever. That's directly at the premiere. My son, he's 17 now. When she said like, yeah, it's at like 50, he leaned over and looked at me and smiled because he knows exactly, because he probably is at like 10% right now. Or he was probably that at 10 o'clock in the morning when he left.
If he's listening, he's feeling his ears are burning probably somewhere. To rewind a little bit, so Pete Docter has this meeting with you and he says, hey, I want you to take on Inside Out 2. And as far as I know, the way you've said it is like they send you to a room, they're like, okay, go figure this out. And obviously there's screenwriters who you bring in, there's it's a huge team that makes it, but it starts off with just you and saying, all right, what am I going to do to take this story forward?
Yeah, I'm feeling the anxiety coming back in because I walked into I was like so excited to get this opportunity. I never thought I'd get it. And what a special film to follow and to have. I love Pete so much and admire him so much. And I was so excited. I walked into the room and instantly I saw all the blank walls. I was like, oh my goodness, it was just me. And I'm like, oh no. What have I gotten myself into?
You're not Riley smiling at herself in the mirror yet. You're many steps away from that.
Yeah, it's funny. I've now with the looking back on it, I mean, in every movie we do, whether I'm the director or story supervisor or story artist, you're trying to put yourself up there and saying things that are real and true that everybody else hopefully go, I know what you're talking about. And that feels right. Especially stuff that you're like, sometimes I don't even vocalize that. I thought I was the only one. There's a lot of this in here that was like, I thought I was the only one. But yeah, I remember walking in and feeling like, well, this movie's all about the struggle between Riley's joy and anxiety. And I'm like, wow, that was kind of the process of making this movie, because I had incredible amount of joy and incredible amount of anxiety. And I definitely felt that. And I was like, all right. And I actually thought to myself, I could let my anxiety take over in this moment. And if I make a movie with anxiety at the console, it's not going to work out well. But if I have joy at my console, then I have a chance at making something that hopefully is really great, because I feel like if I'm having fun and the crew is having fun, I really believe it ends up on the screen. Yeah. Especially if I'm open to that. And it was really fun to be able to direct and say, that's in the movie. If somebody says something really funny or something that's moving, it's really cool to finally be like, because I was always in the position of throwing out ideas. What about this? What about that? I've learned as a story artist and a story supervisor, I need to use the word could and not the word should. You should do this. You know what you should do? It's very like attacking. Yeah. And if I say, you know what you could do, then you and I are working together and we're being collaborative. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it was really great so I'm just throwing out ideas, but here I was actually the one accepting and going like, that I'm not sure about that. Or, and this one I could actually go, oh my gosh, that's really funny. That's in the movie. Yeah. And it was really freeing to be able to do that. But a lot of pressure too.
Yeah, that process you're talking about is such a baked in part of the Pixar process. You're screening the film every 3 months. People are bringing in ideas from all over the place. You were the one saying you could do this, and you're the one receiving them. What did you know about your storytelling skills before taking this on? And then when you assembled your team of the screenwriters on the film, what did they bring? How does everyone kind of fit in with what their strengths are to make the script that we see here?
Yeah, there's so many people. I just had a flood of people hit me. There's so many people that are on this movie. I think of Meg LaFauve. She's the first one that comes in. She's amazing at structure. She's amazing at digging deep emotionally. She calls it like going into lava. Like she'll take me down into like, why do you feel that? Where do you think that comes from? And she'll really want to get somewhere very deep.
I'm imagining the sense of self. It's just a bunch of balls floating around.
Yes, it's it's down there. It's down there. And if the more uncomfortable I get, the more interested she is in that. I've learned to be very vulnerable as a director, especially from doing a movie about emotions. But I think it's true for any movie, to be real and be honest. And I've learned to be very vulnerable in front of large groups of people. I was actually, I haven't talked a lot about this, but when I was first pitching this movie, I said I wanted to make it about, kind of that smile at the end of the film. It was all about, at this age, you're incredibly self-conscious. And you think you're the only one thinking and feeling what you're feeling, and you're really hard on yourself. You start to really compare yourself to others. And it's the I'm not good enough voice, which is really in the film.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to make the movie about that. And I was given advice early on in pitching it that I shouldn't do that. And the reason why they were advising me against it is because this is a very expensive movie with a lot of people behind it. And they're like, I got to be a big, tall, tough director that can see a $200 million film
you
across
the
the finish
line.
You got to be like the
leader of the cavalry or something. Yeah.
So if I show vulnerability, they may not see me as a leader. And I thought about that, and I was like, no, I don't care. Thank you. I actually thought to myself, if I'm going to go down, if this isn't good, there's no guarantee we're going to make this movie, because Pete said if we don't find something we're not both excited about, we won't make it.
Many Pixar projects over the years have, risen and fallen before anybody ever sees them. That's part of the process, right?
The first film I ever worked on never came out. I know that happens. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to go out, I want to go out being who I really am and not have the regret later that I didn't fully put myself out there. Yeah. So I went in, I just put myself out there, and it worked. And I got the green light to move forward. And
led as yourself, as you would want Riley to, I guess.
Yeah, there is a little bit of that kind of like be your true self, because you're constantly, especially at that age, and even now I still catch myself doing it, where you start to change who you are in order to gain acceptance and love from other people. Mm-hmm. Little things, I'll find like I'm sitting the same way as you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. I subconsciously want to be accepted,
Yeah. So maybe this is a good time to talk about anxiety, someone has described me as like the iconic character of 2024, kind of defining the entire world. Not that you guys knew where we would be at in 2024, but turned out to be even more relevant than when you started it.
Yeah.
But I like the way you've talked about that character as starting off as more of a straightforward villain, like kind of really the antagonist of the movie. But Pixar movies sometimes have villains. Sometimes you got lots of hug and bear who needs to kind of be defeated. But a lot of times you've got complex villains. You've got people who need to be understood in a different way. And I'm interested in how anxiety involved in that way, and how you realize that was the story that this needed, that was something that someone who needed to be embraced in the end as opposed to defeated.
Yeah, at the very beginning, I made a list of all, I wanted new emotions to show up. I'm like, I think that's what I want from the audience's point of view. And if there isn't going to be new ones, I'm going to be like, hey, I wanted that. And so I made a list, and anxiety was on that list. And when I was doing research too as to what teenagers were going through at that time, and this is early 2020, January of 2020, before the pandemic, anxiety was on the rise already then, especially in teenagers and especially in teenage girls. And something I can relate to as a teenager. It's been a while since I've been a teenager, so I leaned into that pretty early, and I had this idea of a takeover. The first film, joy and sadness were kind of accidentally thrown out of headquarters. I'm like, what if they were purposely sent away? What if somebody took over? I'm like, that's different from the first film, and I kind of lean into that. I pitched it as, you guys know All About Eve? Do you know that film, All About Eve? I go, it's all about Eve with emotions, and anxiety comes in, she takes over.
She's a huge fan of joy, absolutely, she says in the very beginning.
Yeah, she is, and there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
The only difference between Eve Harrington and anxiety is Eve knows what she's doing, she's purposely doing it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lying that she's doing. And anxiety, so in the beginning, anxiety is a little bit like that. She even lied about who she was. She came in as a mind worker and kind of revealed herself as anxiety. There's too many twists and turns. It was hard to follow. Yeah. And so our first couple passes, she was incredibly antagonistic. And I didn't understand what she was doing, and I didn't like her when she came on screen. Even an antagonist, you kind of want to, like, when you cut back to them, you're like, oh, I wonder what they're up to.
Yeah.
And every time it cut to her, I was like, I just didn't like watching it. And we worked with so many experts on this film, psychologists, and Lisa D'Amour was a big one, and Dacher Keltner too. He was on the first film, and we're like, why do we have anxiety? And they're like, well, it's really there to protect us. All of our emotions are there to try to help us. Some people say, like, why do you have so many negative emotions? And I'm like, no. Like, they're like, anger, it's kind of negative. I go, no, it's a very positive. It can be, there's good sides and bad sides to all emotions. And so anxiety, it's really there to try to protect us and try to keep us safe. And it can go too far in that. The difference between fear and anxiety is fear is the feeling you get of a known threat. If you see a tiger in front of you, you feel fear because you see it. Anxiety is the feeling you get of a perceived threat. Mm-hmm. Something around the corner, a bush, something's in that bush. You know what's better is to assume that there's a tiger in that bush because we'll stay alive. You know what? There's tigers everywhere. And then suddenly you get very anxious, There's a lot of studies that, like, teenage girl, I mean, it isn't specific to girls, but a lot of teenage girls will, like, when they're preparing for a test, and they'll do flashcards. Lisa D'Amour will talk about this, where doing like 15 or 20 is enough, but they'll do 100. Mm-hmm. And that's where anxiety can take over and drive too much and then put too much pressure on them.
How did she become orange?
She was I made a list of emotions I wanted. I actually had a list of colors.
Well, yeah, I mean, the colors are so essential in the first film as well.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, orange. You know what's kind of cool? I just realized this the other day. Riley has that cool rainbow sweater from the first film. And there's all the colors of the emotions from the first film. There's one extra color. Orange is actually on there. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. So I knew orange would be one of the new colors of one of the new emotions. And it just felt right for anxiety. I don't think we ever tried any other colors because it felt like it was nervous. It felt like it has a vibrancy and energy to it.
Yeah.
And so we always kind of landed on that pretty early.
I think you've said that in the first run you had 9 new emotions that threw in there, and it was way too much for the audience to handle.
Yeah, we did, I think, 9 screenings every 3 months, Mm-hmm. I think we did 9 screenings, and the first screening had 9 new emotions.
Wow.
It was too many. It was too many. Anxiety got lost in the crowd. I wanted Riley to feel overwhelmed. I did a drawing of the console, and it just all these emotions all over the console. And I said, that's what it feels like to be a teenager. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted a lot of emotions to show up, and I wanted Joy to feel overwhelmed and Riley to feel overwhelmed, but then I overwhelmed the audience too. And we had to cut them down.
So how did Ennui and Envy, like, how did they wind up being the ones? And Nostalgia also, she'll be back in a few years.
Nostalgia? Oh.
I mean, I assume that's because you just wanted June Squibb to be on set, and you're like, fine, we're keeping Nostalgia so we can get June Squibb to come in and do a couple lines.
June was amazing. Oh my goodness.
She's amazing.
I didn't realize how much I think we did our first record over Zoom, and she was on the screen, and we had the artwork of the character, and I was like, wait a minute, these look so similar. I think somebody photoshopped her little. Do you guys know what kind of she's got glasses, right? Did you notice what kind of colored glasses? Rose colored. Not great. That came from a story artist, Dan Park. He had that idea. I'm like, and then again, I can be like, that's in the movie. That's so smart.
Yeah.
Nostalgia we had from very early on. She was in every screening, and then Ennui was there pretty early on. I liked having a character that I liked how it's a French word. Mm-hmm. So I wanted there's kind of like a new generation, old generation coming in. And the new generation is like gets Riley's like world now. They're a little bit more sophisticated. And the older emotions are a little more simple. So I loved how Ennui literally had, like, she speaks two languages.
She's just cool in French.
Yeah, we just thought that was really fun. And I loved working with Adele.
Yeah.
She was fantastic. I want somebody who's not putting on a French accent. I want a real one. And even when we first recorded, she was like, "No, do you want my real accent, or do you want the accent that Americans think French people have?" I'm like, "Adele, I want your accent. We're here." So that's her being her. So she was there very early on. And then embarrassment was always there because that is such a teenage emotion.
Yeah.
He was very small at first, and then we realized he should be really big because it's his worst nightmare. He wants to do is hide.
He doesn't want to be perceived.
He just wants to not be seen, you know? And so we thought, I knew I wanted a really small emotion and I wanted a really big one to add to the cast. And so I'm like, oh, it's the really big one. And he used to speak a lot in the first few versions. And then I went out to dinner. I was with my son. My daughter was 13 when we began. And I noticed when we went to restaurants, we tried to teach our kids, like, you can order, and teach them how to do it, speak clearly, look up, and all that. And all of a sudden, she got really quiet. And she's like, "I would like the pizza." I was like, what is she doing? It's like she's too embarrassed to speak. And then I'm like, embarrassment should not talk.
Wow.
And I think that would be really great for animation, too, because we've got such great animators. And so, but then we hired a wonderful actor, Paul, who did a lot of vocalizations and had one line at the end. And I wanted to get somebody great for it because who knows what will happen in the future. But then, and then Envy came a little bit later.
Okay.
She was initially Jealousy because I didn't know the difference between Envy and Jealousy at the time. And we even had a joke that they were identical twins that nobody could tell the difference between. Which I still think is a good joke, so maybe that'll come back.
Is that another too many characters thing where you just had to streamline it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Jealousy, it was a hard character to like. At least our take on, we couldn't find an appealing take. And then we asked our experts again, what's the difference? And jealousy is the feeling you get when you're losing something that you had, like you and I are best friends, and somebody comes in, you start hanging out with them more. I'm jealous of them because I'm losing something that I had. Envy is the feeling that you wish you had what others had. I wish I had your talent. I wish I was as funny as you. I wish I was blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what I felt when I was this age. I wish I was like that person.
And that's
so
what you needed
Envy
more.
landed.
Yeah.
And then Io was cast, and she did the character was kind of half-baked a little bit, to be honest, when we first started working. But then Io came in, and she brought in this intense, like, we need hair like that. That was all her. I was like, whoa, I didn't expect it to come out like that. And it's a motivation. It's Envy can be seen as a bad thing, but Envy can be a great motivator to tell you what's important to you in your life and to cause you to make changes in order to get that. Like, for instance, I remember sitting and watching, Toy Story and Toy Story 2 and watching the credits go. And I realized now I was very envious of those names. I wanted to be one of those names. And so then it provided me the motivation to work 10 years and try to get a job.
Become one of those names.
Yeah.
Obviously the emotions are the bedrock of what these stories are, but I want to know about Bloofy and Pouchy.
Oh,
I think
God. Yeah.
Is Pouchy maybe also the breakout character of 2024 in some way?
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yeah. He's so funny.
How did that, it seems in some ways kind of like this movie's version of Bing Bong, where you've got this character who's come way out of left field. Where did that come from that Pouchy would become such an important part of this movie?
We knew we wanted to lock them up somewhere. And we're like, what's a mind jail, right? And we're like, and I had done this idea of like a secrets vault, like a bank, a place where you're like, your secrets are safe with us. And we're like, oh, what if it's a prison? And what if that's where Riley's secrets are kept and they're locked up there? And so we're like, what could Riley's secrets be? And then Kenna Harris, she was one of our story supervisors on the film. And she's like, you know what? I think it would be great if it's a preschool show that Riley still likes to watch but doesn't want to tell anybody. And I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly what that is like. I'm a huge fan of Sesame Street and the Muppets. And I watched it way past I should, and I didn't want to tell anybody. And we're like, that would be fantastic. And so we came up with the Bluefy's house kind of idea. And I'm like, oh, it should be one of those shows where they talk to the camera. First person, like, hey, oh, it's so good to see you here today. And then I'd be like, it'd be really funny if we just reveal that, like, to them they see the camera, but to everybody else they're just talking to a wall. I thought that was so funny. And then we did our first pass on it, and I was like, something's missing. I'm like, the helper character. There needs to be a helper character. They're in all these shows. You got Backpack from Dora. Mm-hmm. You've got Toodles from Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. There's so many helper characters. I watched a lot with my kids.
Any parent who has had kids in the last 15 years sees that. It's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that is.
I couldn't wait to celebrate it and to make fun of it. And what I love about it too, and I didn't realize this until it hit. What I love about it is I try to make this movie for everybody. And I've got a family, and there's very few movies that are released that we all want to go see together. And what I love about Bluefy is the parents are laughing and the kids are laughing, and that is the sweet spot of where I want to be. And so we added the Pouchy character. You want to know? It wasn't Pouchy in the beginning. Oh, it was Fanny. It was a fanny pack. So we called her Fanny.
But you can't release it in the UK?
That's exactly right. Fanny means a whole nother thing in the UK, which actually Amy Poehler found out about. She actually, when we recorded it with Amy, I think she might have been the first person to go, I don't know if you can release this, because she had something in her memoir that was referred to Fanny.
Oh, really?
And she was touring with her book, and they were like, what's this part about Fanny, And she's like, what do you mean? And so, anyway, it means a whole nother thing in the UK. So we changed it to Pouchy.
This is kind of a big question to ask as we start to wrap it up, but I am curious because, the Pixar process is you make the movie over and over, you make the bad version, then you get to the good version. When do you know you have the good version? Is it when the release date is coming up and you just got to get it out there?
Yeah, you're out of time. You're out of time, because I both hate and love deadlines because they give me motivation. Otherwise, we'll keep making it forever. I'll tell you when I realized that because you're constantly trying to make something and you're hoping that it's really good, and we're showing it to other people as much as we can inside the studio and outside the studio too, with audience previews. But I'll tell you, like, when I really felt it, I was on the scoring stage. Andrea Datzman was our composer. And it's really cool. You can be inside the booth or you can be outside with the orchestra. And a lot of the team is in the booth, right? And so every once in a while, Andrea will be like, you might want to go out there for this one, and I'll go and you'll sit and hear 90 musicians play the score. It's magical. It really is. And I remember standing there, and we were recording the panic attack scene at the end of the movie. And it's up on a big screen when you record, and it's silent. And so the performers kind of visually know what they're putting music to. They have no idea what they're saying or anything. But I remember hearing that score, looking up at the screen, and you want the movies to work with the sound off too, right? That's a really strong visual storytelling. And I looked up, and I was hearing the music, and I was watching a lot of the final animation had been done. And I looked up on the screen, and I saw Riley experiencing her panic attack, and I just felt such empathy for her. And I was very worried for her. I just felt the hell out of it in that moment, and I was like, I think we might have something here. Yeah. At least I'm feeling it, and that's all I'm trying to do is do I find it funny? Am I feeling it? Then hopefully other people will too. We kind of make these things for ourselves, and hope that other people will feel that too. And so that's really when I felt, I think we might have something. And I was very proud of the film. And Pete was there, and Jonas Rivera, who's the producer on the first film, he was there. And I was just so proud that, because I didn't work on the first film, and I just wanted to do a lot of people justice by doing a movie that was a follow-up. And I was really proud for that I didn't let them down. Yeah.
And you led with your joy, and you made it. And I feel like everyone else has now felt it too. So it kind of, I would say it worked out pretty well for you guys, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I feel incredibly grateful, I think that's really I should add that emotion. I feel incredibly grateful that it's been embraced the way it has. And to the level that it's been embraced, I can't tell you how many people have stopped me and told me how much the movie has meant to them. Both kids and teenagers and parents. And that's been the real gift, is the impact that the movies had. You know, I there's a wonderful when I was a kid. I again, going back to Jim Henson. I wrote a biography by him, and there's a wonderful quote where he said, "My hope is to be one of those people that leaves the world a little bit better for me having been there." And even as a kid, I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I thought this was my opportunity to do something that's, you know, I wanted to make a fun movie that you would want to watch it over again and laugh at and enjoy with your family. But hopefully put something out in the world that made a little bit better. And so I think that's the part that I feel the most grateful for.
Yeah, I think you've done it. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for making
so much.
this movie.
I'm very grateful for all of you coming out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This show is edited by Brett Fuchs and co-produced by Brett Fuchs and me. Our theme music is by Dave Gonzalez. Thanks again to my guest, Kelsey Mann, to the London Hotel, and to everyone who made this live edition of the Prestige Junkie podcast possible. Get the Prestige Junkie newsletter by going to theankler.com and subscribe to this show on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back on Saturday with another special award season dispatch. See you then.